Welcome to Gotta Run with Will. My name is Jonathan Kane. I'll be your guest host for this episode. Our guests today are two of New York City's top professional triathletes, Cecilia Davis-Hayes and Nicole Falcaro. They're here to discuss their racing and training, as well as the challenges of managing their personal and professional lives while excelling in their sport. Cecilia Davis-Hayes grew up in Philadelphia, where she attended Quaker school and dabbled in sports ranging from ballet to travel soccer. She headed up north to Williams College, where she was a member of cross-country and track teams, though injuries kept her sidelined, giving her more time to hit the books and earn her spot in Phi Beta Kappa Society. In the year after college, while living in France, she fell in love with the sport of cycling, earning her Cat 1 license by 2013. After a serious bike accident and the rediscovery of running, she picked up the sport of triathlon in 2015, and it's her favorite sport yet. Welcome, Cecilia. Nicole Falcaro grew up in rural Northeast Pennsylvania with a low population and not many entertainment options. So Nicole's first sport was Little League Baseball, where she was coached by her dad. She was one of only two girls. She started swimming by the age of 8 and swam over the summers. By 13, she had picked up tennis and naturally softball, but her ball sports career ended in 2002 after a successful inaugural cross-country season. She later joined track, established high school records, and drew the attention of the track and cross-country coach at Bucknell University, where she worked her way up in cross-country, indoor and outdoor track during her 4 years there. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great. So we're going to talk lots, nuts and bolts about triathlon, but first I want to go a little Dr. Phil on you and talk to you about you guys as actual human beings. I think there's sort of at times the stereotype of sort of one-dimensional athlete, especially when an athlete excels as much as you two ladies have. But you both have strong educational backgrounds and professional careers. Tell me a little bit more about that for both of you.
Yeah, I think especially with endurance athletics, it seems common for successful athletes to have strong careers or academic careers as well, because if they're really motivated to do something and they just do everything, everything to the nth degree. I think for me, it helps me to have two simultaneous things that I'm pursuing with equal passion, and that way, there's never, all your eggs in one basket. So I think that's always been a helpful thing for both athletics and academics to have multiple things going on multiple fronts.
So tell me a little bit more about your academic background and your profession and what you're pursuing.
Sure, yeah. I started in medical school at Columbia University Uptown in 2013, so I was due to finish that and become a doctor in 2017, but I took a little bit of a longer course when I started to getting into triathlon and had the opportunity to pursue that. Professionally, I took a few extra research years, and I'll be going back to finish my degree, and I'll graduate in the spring of 2019. So, juggling a few things, but it's a fun journey.
Real underachiever. How about you, Nicole?
Well, I moved to New York because of a job opportunity after college and found that running, and at the time I was only running, was a great way to meet other people. And I kept pursuing the job that brought me to New York, and then took some time off between that job and my current job. But during the whole while, it allowed me to have a balance between my professional career and my sports career. Obviously, during that break that I just mentioned, I much more pursued the training side of it and got a lot better and kind of got over a little hump and eventually qualified for my professional license last year in 2017. I think pursuing that professional career was necessary just to get me into triathlon because it's such an expensive sport. But that's not to say I didn't get help along the way, because my first triathlon was on a road bike that I had borrowed from my physical therapist. I wore a wetsuit borrowed from your wife and wheels from you and your wife as well, and probably a couple other things that I can't think of. But those are the big items that got me into triathlon.
So, again, sticking with the topic of pro triathletes, I think people, just as the stereotype might be of that sort of one-dimensional athlete, I think also you hear pro triathlete, you think about these so-called meccas, Boulder, Colorado, Southern California, yet you guys are here in the city where there are obviously some challenges, not a ton of pools, not a lot of riding options. Do you think it helps you? Do you think it hinders you? What are the pros and cons of being a New York-based pro triathlete?
Yeah, I can think of one right off the top. I think the limited availability of those facilities kind of makes everyone crowd towards the same 2 or 3 great pools, for example. We all see each other on 9W, and we all see each other in Central Park and West Side Highway. I think those are the biggest places. And it allows for almost a tighter community because we're all in this, like, just as any scrappy New Yorker would feel, we're all like, how can we get in our training? And we'll see each other at all the same places.
Yeah, I get this question all the time when I go to races, and people are like, "You're from New York? Wait, New York City, not New York State, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, Manhattan." And I always respond with, "It's really not as bad as you think. I'm able to do everything I need to do." It helps that I live way uptown, so I just hop over the George Washington Bridge to go cycling on the routes you mentioned on 9W. And so I think living in Brooklyn is a different story for cycling. It's really tough. But you really, I mean, I make it work. I think Manhattan is great for running. You have Central Park, you have the paths along the Hudson River, and there are plenty of pools too. Yeah, maybe not open from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. like you have in Boulder Outdoor Pool, but you kind of adjust to what your reality is, and it's totally doable. I think.
Yeah, I think instead we have I know I belong to Asphalt Green right now, and that's open 5:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. And if I can't get my swim in then I'm in real trouble.
Okay,
and
that's the one place in the city. My pool hours are like 12 to 2.
Yeah.
Right, and the pools are probably a little pricier here than in other places.
Yes.
But yeah, I think for most triathletes, the biggest obstacle, and you touched on it, I mean, there's no place to really ride without getting your bike across the George Washington Bridge or doing something. I mean, Central Park, Prospect Park probably aren't real practical.
Yeah, but the trainer is a great tool. I mean, even people in beautiful California use the trainer just because it's a helpful training tool. So I think there's a lot to be said for that, and it's not necessarily a bad thing in the winter to be stuck on the trainer.
So you do a lot of your training indoors.
Yeah, fair amount.
Yeah,
I
certainly.
keep my TT bike mounted on the trainer and don't really take it out for most of the winter. And I think it's it's a super efficient way to get a good workout in. But obviously, we all love the wind on our face and riding the hills.
But no, I have to say, I mean, from a coach's perspective, I don't care how beautiful the weather is. Most of the time, I want my athlete indoors because there's an added level of precision there.
Right.
There's control, and realistically, you're not stopping for red lights. You're not going to have to change a flat tire. You're not dealing with traffic or anything. So regardless of where you're based, there are certainly some advantages there. Yeah. And again, I've always felt, and I think you touched on it a little bit, a New York-based athlete, I feel like you guys are better prepared to, if you do encounter problems at a race, whether it's adverse weather or just anything else, you've negotiated training in New York City. Whereas that athlete who's never trained in anything but 78 and sunny, heaven forbid, there's a drop of rain in their face. So maybe there's some advantages there. But so like most triathletes, you guys both transitioned, pun intended, from single sport, or albeit multiple single sports, to triathlon. How did each of you get involved in that?
Yeah, so I started out as a runner. Well, we both started out as runners first. I think Nicole more successfully than me. I think my body just wasn't meant to run every day. I was successful in high school when I was playing soccer and doing squash and then running track. And then when I got to college and I ran exclusively, nothing went well. I had injuries, I got sick, and my body kind of revolted against it. And after I graduated college, I said, this sport's terrible. I'm never doing this again. I just didn't have the success that I thought I would. I was super frustrated, but I had found cycling as a cross-training mode when I was up in college in Massachusetts. Beautiful place to ride bikes. And then when I moved to France, it was even more, the year after college, it was such a culture there. And there was like 5 cycling clubs in the small town where I lived. And so everybody was doing it. And I was like, heck. So I borrowed some 1980s Peugeot from someone much like you, from one of the teachers at my school. And I fell in love with cycling, so I exclusively did that. I didn't put on a pair of running shoes for like 3 or 4 years, and really just dove into the cycling. Obviously, there was good transfer from the running background, the endurance side of things, but really fell in love with that. Started racing and raced at the highest level, did the Tour of California, did the North Star Grand Prix stage race. So really dove deep into that. And then, as you mentioned in my intro, had a nasty crash in 2014. And it kind of made me reevaluate, like, well, is this worth it? And I thought I would not ride after that, but once I was recovered again, I looked at that bike sitting on my wall in my apartment. I was like, oh man, I want to get back on that. And I thought, how can I do this in a safer way? And a lot of people don't understand that. They're like, oh, bike racing, triathlon, like how is that so different? But it really is different. You ever watch the Tour de France and like, by the end of the race, half of them are crashed out, but that doesn't really happen in triathlon because it's an individual sport, so you're not really in contact with other people. So anyhow, still a way to still do cycling, but in a safer manner. And then also, I rediscovered the running and kind of put it all together and hopped in the pool, and so that was kind of my path to triathlon.
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
How about you, Nicole?
I was rarely ever injured in college, and I think that actually led me to get a little more tired of the monotony of only running. And after pursuing PRs post-collegiately, which I was successful at marginally, I realized the concept of diminishing return and was like, I kind of just want to change it up. And so I had grown up swimming, and so I had that in my background, although now you wouldn't believe it, swimming is my worst of the disciplines. Not by much, but, so I'm putting a lot of work in this winter in that. But I always thought I would do a triathlon and never ever had cycled before. So like I mentioned, I borrowed a bike and I went out with you on a ride, and
you were terrified the whole time. You coasted down every hill.
Yes, I didn't clip in going over the bridge, like even on the flat part. And I think you said your goal was to make me fast enough that I couldn't ride with you anymore.
Which happened a little too fast for my ego, but yes.
Yeah, and that's how I got into it.
As I mentioned earlier, you've earned your pro card, and you followed kind of eerily similar paths to becoming pros. Cecilia, in 2016, you won a couple of the biggest races in the country, New York City Tri, Philadelphia, and you won a 70.3 or a half iron. And then the next year, Nicole, you did the same thing. You won those two big races and your first 70.3. Was turning pro, when was that on the radar for each of you? Was that something that you always had in the back of your mind, or that just sort of snuck up on you?
I think it snuck up on me, and I don't even want to count New York in a way. It feels a little tainted because everyone says, oh, the fast swim, and
You were on the top step of the podium, right?
I was.
Okay.
I won that race.
It's not tainted.
And Philly was also, for me, I turned into a duathlon, and I think it did it for you as well.
Yeah, it did, because the debris in the water. So,
yeah, and it's known for turning into a duathlon, although I'm never happy when that happens. So I qualified in New York, but I don't think that Philly was a qualifier. And I ended up, once I won a 70.3, I thought, and had beaten a previous or an ex-pro, maybe current pro, I thought, okay, now I'm really ready. So.
How about you, Cecilia?
I guess since I'd been kind of at the top of the sport in cycling, or not the top, but I'd been kind of at the elite level in cycling. I guess when I got into triathlon again was right after that. I was kind of used to being at that level, and so I was kind of chomping at the bit a little bit, to be honest. I didn't know what would happen with the swimming, but I kind of wanted to be in that racing people who are like treating the race like me, like I was, seriously as I was. And I felt like the first few triathlons I entered, kind of local stuff, people were doing it for fun, which is great, and so was I, but they weren't kind of having the same attitude about it. And so I think when I discovered that there was such thing as a pro field, I was like, oh, those are my people. I want to race them. I want to race people who like really want to do this well. And so pretty quickly, I think my third race, my third triathlon in 2015, I went to USA Triathlon Age Group Nationals and saw how there were a lot of good people. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is serious. But I went there and I won my age group and got third. And I was like, okay, I think, I can, and that's when I qualified. And I was like, I thought we could probably, give it a whirl.
And I'm really surprised how many people are surprised that someone takes their pro card. And I think that's one thing in triathlon that's for women especially are afraid to do because they worry that, oh, I'm going to be like the worst pro out there. And that might happen to me. But the fact that I don't want to say stomping over the competition, but I was winning. I won every single race for the amateurs except for Worlds last year. And I thought, why am I going to keep competing in age group if I'm going to, let's me move out, be a small fish in a big pond, which has always helped me in the past, and allow the other women to step up and be the best age grouper, and then they will earn their pro card and move pro. So.
Sure. Well, and we keep referring to you having both earned your pro card and racing as pros, but I suspect that some of our audience doesn't understand the implications of racing as a pro. So tell us a little bit more about what that actually means.
Okay. You have more experience.
Are you traveling on private jets and everyone?
Right. I think it is a loaded term. So in definition, I think being a professional athlete means that's what you're doing to earn the majority of your income. And I think there are only a handful of athletes in the world for whom that is true. And so for that next group of us who's not, winning the professional Ironman races that pay thousands and thousands of dollars to win and really can support an income, I think for us it means racing in a special division where you get to start first. It's a small group. There's usually only 10 to 20 women starting in the professional division in each race, and it's the right to earn prize money. And the entry fee system is slightly different, so it allows you to just buy a license at the beginning of the season and then race as much as you want. So it's really a more affordable way to race, since most of us are not, rolling in it. So.
Still got considerable expenses, I suspect, with both entry fees and obviously gear. And triathlon is not a cheap sport.
No, far from it. But I think also as a professional, you do now have the right to kind of market yourself and gain sponsorships to help you with offset some of those expenses.
As opposed to both of you guys alluded to doing your first race on a borrowed bike, and you're not on that anymore. It's not a cheap sport.
No.
It's tricky. A few years back, I was asked to contribute to a story about, and they asked me for women-specific triathlon tips. And because I'm a bit of a wise guy, my immediate response was, train like the boys, wear a different bathing suit. But all joking aside, as a coach, as an exercise physiologist, I have no real justification to treat athletes differently depending on gender. But I wonder if you have encountered either within the world of triathlon or in previous sports times when your coaches have treated you differently. Do you maybe disagree with me and think there is a reason to treat men and women differently? And also just tell me a little bit about who you do your training with. Is it men, is it women, et cetera?
Being the top level of the women allows you more training partners that are of the male gender. It is hard to find women who are as fast as me in the run and on the bike. Not so hard in the swim.
For now.
So we actually train together a lot, as much as possible. We have different coaches, which makes it more challenging. But yeah, I definitely have a few male training partners, and especially for the run and bike. Again, good reason to be on the trainer. You don't need a partner. When you're outside, absolutely, it helps to have someone to push you.
Yeah, I think I do probably half of my training alone, but it's really nice to have the company. And I was really lucky to find Nicole because we match up well on, really we can do all three together. Logistically, the bike is not as easy to swing. But I would say there's two other pro triathletes who live downtown in Manhattan, the Wassner twins, and they're both comparable to us as well. So we do a fair bit of our training with them too. So that helps a ton. Just to have the female side of things just makes it, you're more on the same page. But I do have a bunch of male training partners who I like. I ride with a Blue Ribbon cycling team, so a few of those guys I go riding with, which is great. And then we both are on the Central Park Track Club, a running team as well, and they provide good training partners. You
mentioned that you train together. I'm always amused at the fact that the first time you encountered each other, and I was there, was at a race where you finished 1-2, and yet developed a nice friendship and bond out of that and have become good training partners there. Did you, I don't know, I haven't asked either of you this, but at that first encounter, did you anticipate that, or did you just sort of say, okay, I'm done with you?
You were talking about this recently where Cecilia was like, yeah, I showed up and I was like, I'll be fine at this thing. Like, I'm going to crush it.
Race.
Yeah, you showed up with a road bike and you didn't have money with you, if I remember correctly.
Yes, you're right. I have no money.
And Cecilia was thinking, like, when I was with her for the first, it was a 2-mile run, a 10-mile bike, and a 2-mile run in Prospect Park. And she was like, whoa, like this girl's right with me on this 2-mile. And then once we got on the bike, it was a different story.
Yeah, but it was fun to have you to run with. And we ran kind of fast. I remember we did that 2-mile maybe like just under 12 minutes.
12 minutes, yeah.
So it's fast. And I actually do remember like talking to you guys after, and I think you maybe you showed up too, thinking you were just gonna have it in the bag. I don't know. Maybe you're a little like surprised that this other random girl who you didn't know showed up.
Yeah.
So I remember thinking, oh man, she's sort of pissed at me. We probably won't be friends.
But we didn't talk right after, like after that we weren't instantly friends or training partners. And it wasn't until Cecilia joined Central Park Track Club that we reconnected through our coach. And we did the first time we met after the race, we did a whole workout together, like side by
shoulder
side.
by shoulder. It was like totally meant to be.
Nicole, as your coach, I know that the 2016 New York City Tri was a disappointing race for you, and I know that there was always sort of in the back of your head, and certainly in the back of mine, was, okay, you're going back there and you're winning that, and you did in 2017. Was that your proudest moment in triathlon? Was there something else? What sort of stands out for you?
You should see me crossing the line of New York City Triathlon. You would think of this most recent year. You would think that someone told me my dog just died, because like I am all seriousness. I had no idea I was winning. And I had a small idea, but I had lost track of a few girls and my transition wasn't great in T1. And so while I only saw one woman pass me, and I saw you at the turnaround saying, all you, Nicole, which I wasn't really sure what that meant. And
I should have been more explicit. You are winning.
So I knew that one woman was ahead of me, and I passed her on the run, but I just kept thinking there must be other women around, because nobody on the run course was like, go, you're winning, because the pro field had started about 10, 12 or so minutes in front of me. So people don't know. You don't know who's pro and who's not unless you like look closely at the bib, I guess. It wasn't that proud in the moment. It was kind of nice to hear afterward, but when I crossed the line, there was no announcement.
But looking back, is that one that you're welcome to say no. I mean,
I would say, I think my first full 70.3, my first 70.3 in 2016, the swim was canceled. So I say my first full 70.3 this year at Rev 3 Poconos that I won was my proudest moment, because I had a 4-minute deficit off the bike when I started the run. And I know that you and my family was there in person, and you were watching from stalking results.
Vacation in Massachusetts, but yeah, refreshing constantly.
Just having run down the first woman, and it was 4 loops of the same thing over the 13.1 miles, and running down and gaining just like 10 seconds here, 20 seconds here the whole time was my proudest moment.
My proudest moment was this fall at the Half Ironman in Miami. I had a traumatizing swim. It was the most scary thing that ever happened to me, or, well, not, that's maybe exaggerating, but it was pretty terrible. It was these huge waves, and it was in salt water, and I felt like I was just getting rocked around by the ocean, like when you're a kid and you go boogie boarding and you get like submerged by the wave. And I was just so far behind. I was like, this is terrible. I almost grabbed onto a kayak to like stop. It was just, this is the first event in the triathlon. But I was really far back. I was maybe 10 minutes behind. I wasn't last out of the water of the female pros. There was one straggler behind me. But I didn't give up, and I went and like biked the hell out of it and ran some people down, and it was a hard day for everyone, and I got 5th in like a really strong field, and I beat the girl who won New York City Tri. She also had a rough swim, and it just shows that you never know. It's not over till it's over, especially in a 4.5-hour-long race where it's grueling. It was a hot day, a rough swim, a rough bike, and if you just stick with it, even if you have a rough moment, you can still come out ahead. And so I was really proud of that. That took a lot of guts.
Tremendous. Both moved from sprints and Olympics. You We've talked a lot about doing 70.3. Is there an Ironman in the future for either of you?
When they shorten the run.
When they okay, there you go.
After I do residency.
Okay, beautiful. Race you've always wanted to do but haven't.
A beer mile.
We can arrange for that.
Oh, been there, done that. Fifth Avenue Mile.
All right, race you always wanted to win but haven't yet.
Pro 70.3.
Okay, I like
You
it.
stole mine. I was gonna say, yeah. Any pro race,
There you
please? I just want to spray the champagne.
Yes.
Well, there you
Yes.
go. Favorite place to ride in the New York area? Let's call it that.
Harriman.
I like that answer.
River Road.
Okay. Swim?
Long course. Asphalt green.
Okay.
The Hudson.
There you go. And what about running? You can't say Central
Bridle
Park.
Path.
Okay, so we got one Central Park vote.
In the New York area?
Yeah.
Yeah, also Bridle Path. All the time.
No one could go with Rockefeller. No one could come visit me up in Van Cortlandt. You have to stick there. All right. Cecilia, something that we don't know about you. Doesn't even have to be triathlon related.
Oh.
Something's deep, dark secret.
Deep dark. Whoa. I was gonna go with.
Doesn't have to be so deep or
I
dark.
speak French and Spanish. I don't know.
Very cool. I know pi to about 150 digits, 200 if you give me a chance to study. 3.141592653589793T384626.
And now if we can combine that with the beer mile, then we'll be in business. If we can see how many you can recite after a beer mile, that'll be the real trick.
Yeah.
Wow, this has been wonderful. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Will Sanchez for once again allowing me to sit in the big boy chair and trusting me with that. Cecilia Davis-Hayes, Nicole Falcaro, I've enjoyed your stories, I've enjoyed your tips, I've enjoyed your humor. I hope you both have a great 2018 season, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.